What is up, Critics? So for the past few months, I've been getting questions as to which cars are the best for racing in each class currently in 2021 after the Tuners DLC released. So I decided to just put all of them in one video to make it easier for you guys. So these cars are mainly chosen based on Bruffy1322's track testing and some of my personal experiences in racing as well. I'll leave a link to his channel down below in the description if you haven't subscribed to him, and you really should subscribe to him because he is undoubtedly the king for car testing for GTA by far. Keep in mind that the cars chosen are factoring in a combination of handling, acceleration, and top speed for optimal track performance. So again, the cars chosen are not chosen based only off acceleration or only off top speed or short airport drag races. It's a combination of multiple factors and the overall best cars for actual racetracks with turns, not just straight line performance. And also what I decided to do is add in budget cars for each class as well for players who can't afford the pricier cars at the top of some of the classes. So we're going to start with the slower classes first and then work our way up to the more faster ones. So let's go ahead and get started with the slowest class, which is the bicycles class. And the best one for racing in that class is any of the three race bikes. Now keep in mind that you don't actually need to buy any of these as they aren't customizable at all, so just pick any of the three race bikes if you ever come across a bicycles race. Moving on to utilities class, the best one is the Saddler pickup truck. Now you can steal and store this truck off the street for free or buy it for $35,000. This is probably one of the least race classes up there with the bicycles class, but definitely worth having in your garage since it's essentially free. Now onto the vans class, we have the Gang Burrito and the Rumpo Custom. Now you only need to buy one of these. I personally recommend the Gang Burrito as it's a little cheaper and it's not as top heavy as the Rumpo Custom, which has a tendency to go on two wheels and tip over a lot. As for the budget vehicle for this class, it would be the Gang Burrito. Moving on to the compacts class, we have the BF Club. Now this car is an absolute animal in compact class races. It's basically a sports car in the compacts class. It's crazy how quick it is. Now as for the budget car for this class, it would be the Grotti Brioso RA, but keep in mind that this is still way off the pace of the BF Club. But if you truly want to compete in that class, you're gonna unfortunately have to spend the $1.3 million on the club. Now onto the Coupes class, we have the Karen Previon. So this car recently released with the Tuners DLC as the last drip feed car and is currently the king of that class. Now as for the budget car for this class, it would be the Urmach Zion, which is a car you can get off the street and store it for free, and it's surprisingly not too far off the $1 million Previon. It's still decently competitive depending on the track. Moving on to the muscle car class, we have the Dominator ASP. So this car recently released with the Tuners DLC as well, and is currently the king of that class for most tracks, as it basically drives like a sports car pretty much. Now as for the budget car for this class, it would be the Pizwazer Dominator in my opinion. This car is now free for all players as of the Tuners DLC. Some people say it might have been a mistake that Rockstar accidentally made it free for everyone because before it was an exclusive to returning players from 360 and PS3, but at the time of this recording it is still free. If they change anything, I will update it in the pinned comment, but currently that's the budget vehicle for this class. Now onto the sedans class, we have the Benefactor Shafter V12. Now keep in mind that this car is in the sports class, but it is usable in sedan races. Now this car only costs $116,000 and it's an insane value for the raw speed and performance you get. Now as for the budget car for this class, it would still be the Shafter V12. I feel it's cheap enough, and let's be honest, if you're not in this car, you will lose. It is miles ahead of all the sedans in the class, and it even beats out the recently added $1 million Tailgater S. Moving on to the SUVs class, we have the Tauros. This Lamborghini Urus inspired SUV surprisingly only costs $498,000, which is an insanely good deal in my opinion for the performance you get out of it, not just for the class but in general as well. The Tauros is actually the fastest four-door vehicle in a straight line for top speed as well, which is just insane. Now, as for the budget car for this class, it would still be the Tauros in my opinion. Purchasing a lower end SUV in this class is definitely going to put you at a major disadvantage, as the Tauros literally has sports car level of performance and nothing can really touch it at that price point. Now onto the Sports Classics class, we have the Turismo Classic and the Cheetah Classic. Now you only need to buy one of these. I personally recommend the Turismo Classic as it's a bit cheaper. It's insane how well these two cars drive. They handle like modern sports cars, which is insane, and their speed is pretty good as well. Now I do want to mention that there are some races where the Retinue Mark II can beat the Turismo Classic and Cheetah Classic. Again, it's more track dependent, but for most tracks, the Turismo Classic or Cheetah Classic is better. As for the budget car for this class, it would still be the Turismo Classic. Sports Classics cars in general are not very cheap. Most of the good ones are over $1 million, and at about $700,000 for the Turismo Classic, I believe it is an insanely good deal for what you're getting. Moving on to the off-roads class, we have the BF400. Now keep in mind that this bike is in the motorcycles class, but it is usable in off-road races. It surprisingly only costs $95,000, and it absolutely wrecks everything in the off-road class, especially if you're constantly doing wheelies. Now I will note that there are some races with deep water areas and intense off-roading situations where the BF400 just can't compete. So for those types of races, you want to purchase either the trophy truck or a Camacho, which is actually priced pretty decently at $345,000 and performs very well. As for the budget vehicle for this class, I would recommend the Sanchez. You can get this dirt bike off the street for free or purchase it for $7,000 as shown. But if you're able to, I would suggest that BF400 for the $95,000. It's a lot faster, and honestly it's not all that expensive for what it is. Now onto the Tuners class, which is more of a subclass rather than an actual class in itself, which is currently only comprised of cars from the Tuners DLC. But anyways, we have the Karen Sultan RS Classic, which is ultimately the best one for most tracks and races. And to quickly note, this is obviously not factoring in stancing or low grip tires or any of those little tricks. This is based on the cars fully upgraded with normal stance and normal tires. Now as for the budget car for this class, there honestly really isn't one, as these cars cost over $1 million, but if you can get either the Calico, Vector, or obviously the Sultan RS Classic for free from the prize ride, that's obviously the ideal way to get one of these. Moving on to the sports class, we have the famous Pariah and the Itali GTO. Now I do want to mention that the Itali RSX is very competitive as well, but the Itali GTO and the Pariah are just more consistent and faster on most tracks. Now in terms of which of the two to buy, in my opinion the Itali GTO is a bit better than the Pariah if you have a bumpy road or a stunt race, so that's the one I would ultimately recommend, as you can use it for almost any racing situation. Now as for the budget car for this class, it would be the Elegy RH8, which is actually free for people who have a social club account. Now this car is very fast around corner intensive tracks, and it's got good handling and acceleration as well. Now for the supercars class, we have the Progen Emirates and the Benefactor Krieger. Now you only need to buy one of these. They are extremely close competitive wise. Deciding on which one to buy is all personal preference. Now I will say that the Krieger is a lot easier to drive as it's all-wheel drive. The Emirates is a bit harder to drive, as the back end does tend to step out sometimes if you're not careful. Now I do want to mention that there are some stunt races where the Devest 8 actually beats the Emirates and Krieger, but again, for most track situations, the Krieger is definitely the overall better choice. Now as for the budget car for this class, that would be the Dubachi Wagner in my opinion, if you want a chance at competing with the Emirates and Krieger. And if you're really on an even more of a strict budget, under $1 million, and just want a good supercar in general for the money, even though you would be at a major disadvantage, that would be the Zentorno. At only $725,000, it's a good value for a supercar in general, for driving around in free mode and stuff like that. Moving on to the motorcycles class, we have the Shotaro and the Hakachu Drag. Now you only need to buy one of these. They compete very closely in the class on very tight tracks with lots of turns. I personally recommend the Hakuchu Drag since it's a lot cheaper. Now as for the budget vehicle for this class, it would be the Batty 801 in my opinion. This bike only costs $15,000 and has good handling, and of course allows you to wheelie, which gets you to ridiculous top speeds to be able to keep up with the top two bikes on some tracks. And lastly, we have the open wheels class. Now at the time I'm recording this, we currently only have 4 open wheel cars in the class, and the Benefactor BR8 is currently the king. Now as for the budget vehicle for this class, there really isn't one, as they all pretty much cost over $3 million each, which is pretty insane, but if you could snag either one of them on sale or on the casino podium, that's definitely the more ideal way to get one of these. Anyways guys, hope you enjoyed. Now you know the best cars for racing for maybe some vehicle classes you weren't sure about. And of course, I will update the pinned comment as newer and faster cars are released. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you in the next one.